President Cyril Ramaphosa has a plan of action following the expert panel report on the July unrest. He says critical vacancies in the State Security Agency and crime intelligence will be filled and positions affected by suspensions will be addressed. So yesterday he removed Police Commissioner Khehla Sitole from his position. The relationship between Sitole and Police Minister General Bheki Cele had broken down. The minister had on several occasions complained about Sitole's performance, accusing him of being entangled in factional ANC battles.
The tale of police commissioners not finishing their term of offices continues in South Africa. Police Commissioner Khehla Sitole has been shown the door by President Cyril Ramaphosa following an unhealthy working relationship with the Police Minister, Bheki Cele. The high panel expert report on the July unrest was scathing on the police service and stating there was no clear response plan to the unrest that unfolded in 3 provinces. Following the State of the Nation address, President Cyril Ramaphosa promised heads would roll in the security cluster. Khehla Sitole is now the first casualty.
We will soon be announcing leadership changes in a number of security agencies to strengthen our security structures.
Prior to the expert panel report, President Cyril Ramaphosa requested the now fired police commissioner to send a written statement as to why he shouldn't be suspended. But unfortunately for Sitole, he wasn't suspended, but instead fired with immediate effect, or either, as they say, parted on mutual grounds.
Well, we go through a number of processes in government. We have to follow a number of processes, and by mutual agreement, the National Police Commissioner and myself agreed that it is in the interest of the country and the police service that he should terminate his services a little earlier than he had anticipated. So we're now going to engage in a process now to appoint someone else as head of the police. Thank you so much.
Minister Bheki Cele has been at loggerheads with the police commissioner for a while now. According to the minister, Khehla Sitole was a wall during the July unrest last year, prompting the minister to make it clear that their working together was drawing to an end.
I want the general, I want the national commissioner that will work together in a full understanding that our job is not the alignment to the factions, as there's been a call of that, but the person that when it comes to the crime intelligence, we are together, we are working in unison, both physically and mentally, and both in understanding that our first prize is to deal with the crime rather than any other thing.
Lastly and quickly, Minister, are you working together? That's the question.
Well, up to this point, especially on the latter part of our, even today, he's not here. I was moving around the laboratories, he's not there. Most of the time I find myself working with the deputies. Maybe that question you'll ask him, why most of the time the minister will work with the deputies rather than the man himself.
The Deputy Minister of Police, Cele, organized a meeting between EFF leader Julius Malema and the Police Commissioner Khehla Sitole. However, Minister Cele did not take kind to the meeting, alluding that the Commissioner was conspiring against him with the opposition leader. Cele says President Cyril Ramaphosa has handled the Commissioner's departure with maturity and provided leadership.
The Commissioner, in any case, his term of office was coming to an end this year, and out of their interaction, they have mutually agreed that it will be in the interest of the country and everybody that the Commissioner felt he must retire early. That's why the President thanked the Commissioner, and even myself, I want to add my word to the President that we appreciate the contribution that National Commissioner General Khehla Sitole has made. I'm happy that the President has provided leadership and guidance to the country. That is what is expected from the President and from the National Commissioner, the manner in which this matter has been resolved. Hopefully, it will assist us going forward from the experiences that we have gained working with him.
Some opposition parties have slated President Cyril Ramaphosa for firing Khehla Sitole, stating that the president is factional in his approach and just wants to protect Minister Bheki Cele. Samkele Masego, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Thank you very much, Samkele. Let's bring in now Dr. Guy Lamb, who's a criminologist at Stellenbosch University. Doc, a very good afternoon to you. Thanks indeed for your time as always. So, just take us back. How did we get here? I mean, there's been a lot of dysfunctionality in the South African police service for quite some time now.
Yes, there has. I mean, we've had a challenge. It's probably the most difficult job in the country, certainly after the president. I mean, the South African Police Service is the largest government service. It has more than 1,100 police stations throughout the country. It kind of plays a very important role. I think the kind of problem that we've had is in the early days, we sort of had a transitionary period where it was, sort of the leadership of SAPS was white, male dominated, and that was maintained in the early 1990s for stability, and then we started to see changes happening. But the problem is the changes were bringing in people with no policing experience from sort of largely political appointments, so people like Cele, the late Cele, and Ria Fiecha were sort of brought in as outsiders to bring sort of a kind of a fresh approach to policing, try to kind of shake things up a bit. But the problem is the police is quite a conservative organization. It's kind of political culture is well entrenched. So to try and change things is very difficult. But also if you don't have a policing background, you don't really understand the police. And I think that's the problem we've had over the years with political appointments. Then, of course, with Sitole, and before Sitole, we had Falalane. And that was a sort of a return almost to bringing in career police officials to run the police. But of course, because the police play such an important role, there's obviously pressures, political party pressures on them, especially when there's factional fighting within the ANC. And it's quite difficult for national commissioners to try and navigate that. And I think what's really happened with Khehla Sitole was that he kind of got pulled into these factional battles. Certainly was appointed by former President Zuma, and so therefore has been, accused of being sort of, aligned to certain factions as a result of that. But it has always been a very, very difficult job to do because it's such a large organization with different interests.
Doc, I mean, what does this kind of dysfunction, in particular in the upper echelons of the police, do to the confidence of ordinary South Africans who simply just want a safe environment?
Well, I think, ordinary South Africans, when they look at policing, they're looking at what's happening in their community, what's happening in their policing area or policing precinct. And if they're getting good service from the police, if they go and report a crime or they call the police up and say, I've had a burglary or a break-in, please come around, and the police do and they behave in a professional way, then members of the public, have fairly high confidence in the police. But if you go to many high crime areas, the police are often overwhelmed, don't respond to calls as effectively as they should, and as a result, confidence is low. But if you add on top of that, where you've got police leaders who sort of mired in political controversy, are being accused of being inefficient and effective, and you're seeing kind of connections to, kind of organized crime and accusations of corruption, then of course confidence is shaken. And we know what's been added to this, certainly with the outgoing National Commissioner, has been these IPID cases. So, a lot of the focus has been around the July riots and where was the National Police Commissioner? Was he actually doing his job? He wasn't seen, he wasn't being present, but he may have been doing other things behind the scenes. But the problem is these two IPID criminal cases that have been lodged against the current National Police Commissioner had to do with him not cooperating with IPID investigations, which is a legal requirement, and he wasn't doing that. So I think that was part of his undoing. But of course, the kind of public confidence being shaken largely as a result of, kind of the police not being able to handle the July unrest that affected them.
Yeah, this post, one would be forgiven for thinking, is almost seen as a poison chalice. You had the late Cele, you had Ria Fiecha, you had Khomotso Phahlane, all dogged by some kind of controversy. So competency and criteria would be very important in deciding who the next police commissioner would be, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. You need to understand the police. You have to come from a policing background. And it's not like a sports team where you can bring in a coach from another country and then they'll coach the team. It has to be a South African to run the police. And obviously they have to understand how the South African police services work at the different levels. But then, so that's important. But it's really about, the leadership kind of leadership culture and the kind of leadership personality, because you've got so many, because it's such a large organization, you've got different factions that operate within it. So you have to be able to try and unite people. So that's the kind of important part of it. Then also you have to be quite brave, because there are a number of organized criminal networks that are operating within the police. And, you know, for example, we saw the assassination of Charles Kinnear, because he was investigating corrupt networks within the police. He got assassinated. And then other networks have been exposed, and those networks have often been connected to former national commissioners or provincial commissioners. So you're going to have someone who's going to have to be quite brave, but also have a group of senior leaders with him who are able to do the necessary work within the police and kind of take the kind of good cops with them. And that's the important thing.
Who could that be? You've said quite a mouthful about what possible criteria needs to be taken into account for someone to occupy such an important position. I mean, is there anyone that we should be looking at within the South African Police Service at this stage?
It's so difficult to tell, because typically when you're looking at these sort of things, it's got to be a fair process with the person who has the right credentials. So usually one would be looking at, you know, divisional commissioners or deputy national commissioners, be looking at divisional commissioners, you'd be looking at provincial commissioners. So there's a body of people that are there. And, you know, often it's the ones who are doing a good job often aren't in the public light, particularly if they're at a divisional commissioner level, because it's the national commissioner that's getting all the limelight. So I think it would be important to have as a robust process as possible, and I think to have some sort of public participation and parliamentary participation in that process, so that members of the public can see what's going on and actually maybe even have representations who can ask questions, and therefore, you know, the CVs and the credentials can be open to greater scrutiny, and that really hasn't happened in the past. But I think we're at that moment now where it would be actually quite helpful to do that.
Dr. Guy Lamb, thank you very much indeed. Criminologist at Stellenbosch University. Always a pleasure having you here on the programme. Thanks indeed.